This is Captain Ross with 3B's Captain School, and in this video we're going to go over the application and checklist for the OUPB or 6-pack license. Application package. What we're going to do is review the following application forms and the requirements to fill out each. We're going to briefly go over each. I would recommend you grabbing a copy of each of these forms while we're going over it and filling it in and follow along and fill it in. All right, so first form, the application. So this is just a screenshot of the top of the form. The first 2 pages of this form is instructions for how to fill it out. And if you just kind of follow along, my red arrow here. So section 1, and I'll say in the top of the form, I'll show you in a second here, section 1, and this is 1.1, 1.2, 1.2b, 1.2c. It just tells you exactly what information they're looking for in each of those blocks. Section 1 continued here. This is the home address, delivery, mailing address, primary phone number. When you're filling the form out, and I'll show you where that section is. So this is the section we're talking about there. When you're filling this out, if you have any questions about what information they're looking for, just go back to the first 2 pages of the 719B and it'll give you an idea of what information you're looking for. Most of it's pretty self-explanatory: name, social security number, etc. So the forms we're using now, if you look, they expired 3/31/2021. I'm recording this in August of 2023. They still have not updated the forms. I went and looked at the website today. So these are still good until they update them. And then even when they update them, they said the forms are going to be good for 6 months after the update. So just make sure if you're filling this application out, I would say after December 2023, I would check the NMC, National Maritime Center website. You can just Google National Maritime Center and it'll come up, and go to their forms tab on the left and make sure that the form you're using to your application form is the most updated one. It hadn't expired. Right now, 3/31/21 are the most current forms. All right, so continuing on, section 1, instructions, next of kin, emergency contact, requested merchant mariner credential. It tells you how to fill that section out, which we'll go over. More instructions. Safety and suitability instructions for section 3, section 4. So let's look at the form. Here is the top of the form. Very basic. Last name, first name, any aliases you may have. Social security number, it says right here, for original only. Whenever you see for original only, it's for the first time you get any license, whether that be 6-pack or 100-ton. In the future, if you're going to upgrade or renew, you don't put your social security number here or any place on these forms where you see original only. You are going to use your reference number after your first initial issue, and that's your number that's on your actual mariner's card, your mariner's reference number. Once you send in your application, you'll get an email. Lately, it's been about 10 days after the application's been submitted with your mariner's number, and that's the same number you'll use for every time you reference your license, whether you're going to renew, upgrade, or you're contacting the National Maritime Center because you have questions about your license. Your date of birth, citizenship, place of birth, state, country, color of eyes, color of hair. Take this right from your driver's license. This is your street address, primary phone number, your city, state, zip code, email address, and then delivery address if different. So if it's not different, you just put it in here one time. Also, you got to have a home address there, or an address. It can't be a P.O. box. All right, this is the lower half of the same page. Now we're going to do next of kin. You check this box right here. If the mailing address, city, state, and zip code are the same as your address above, put their name. If it's different, you didn't check this box here, you put their street, city, state, zip code. Relationship, their primary phone number, and their email address. So in this section right here, section 2, we're going to tell them what credential we are applying for. So if you're taking this class, you're applying for original. So you're going to check this box right here, officer original. So check this box for initial issue. You're also going to write in the space here, OUPV, near coastal or inland, and that will depend on your sea service, which we'll cover in a few minutes. So you're going to ask for OUPV, near coastal or inland. The second part of that page, safety and suitability section. So the first one is TWIC. You're only going to indicate in this box if you have an exemption from TWIC. If this is your initial issue, you're not going to have an exemption. You have to have a TWIC card, so just leave this blank. Now we're going to get to the criminal record, convictions, and drug use. So read each of these questions. Have you ever been a user of or addicted to a dangerous drug, including marijuana, within the last 10 years? If you answer yes, that's just one of the questions. Read all of these questions here. If you answer yes to any of these questions, you know, have you ever been a dangerous drug user? Have you ever had your driver's license revoked or suspended? You're going to have to fill out an additional form called a 719C. So any of these questions, if you say yes to, you got to complete a form 719C, which we're going to cover here in a few minutes. You say no to all these, you don't use that 719C, you just send this one in. The next block here is the National Driver Registry. You have to check this block. You have to give the Coast Guard permission to check your National Driver Registry. So it says right here, consent mandatory for original, which is what we're all going for. And you're basically just authorizing them to check your driving record. All right, Mariners Outreach System. This is completely optional. If you want to consent to voluntary participation in the Mariner Outreach System to be used by the Maritime Administration in the event of a national emergency or sea lift crisis, check yes. If no, check no. Okay, next is the bottom half of that same page, and this is where you're going to put your signature. So there's a couple of things that happen here. The top here, this is if you're under 18 years of age. So this application is used for different credentials that you can apply for. Some you don't have to be 18. If you're applying for an OUPV or six-pack license, you have to be 18 years old. So if you're over 18, you're not going to have anything to do with this block here, so just leave that blank. You're going to sign this form you just completed. What does your signature attest to? That all information in this application is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, and that you understand an application determined to be fraudulent may result in denial of your application for 1 year from the date of submission, even if the fraudulent information by itself was not a cause for denial of prosecution. So if you're not telling the truth basically on your application, and it's not something that you lied about that would prevent you from getting your license normally, they still may deny your license for up to 1 year just because you didn't tell the truth. So, tell the truth. The third paragraph here, I do solemnly swear or affirm, this is the mariner's oath. The first time you get your license, your original, you have to recite this oath and set in front of a authorized individual. So what is an authorized individual? It's a notary. So you're going to have to get a notary to witness you recite that mariner's oath that's located right here above your signature. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I'll faithfully and honestly, blah, blah, blah. So you need to recite that in front of a notary, and they need to sign right below your signature. You're going to sign here, month, date, year. Notary's going to sign here, month, date, year, and then just have them put their stamp right here over top of the date or somewhere in this area. It's critical also that you print your name at the bottom of the application. So on pages 4 and 5, there's this block here for you to put your name. You don't put your name on pages 1 and 2 because they're just instruction pages. You don't put your name on the bottom of page 3 because that's the page that we filled out all your information, so your name's already on that page. So pages 4 and 5, they want your printed name at the bottom, and this is to make sure someone else doesn't find your notarized page 4 and use it as their own license. So your name will go right there. So your full signature, there's the mariner's oath, and that's where the public notary signs. Don't forget, like I said, to write your name right above this red line down here. And this is the top of page 5. It is a third-party authorization. So again, if you're confused about what that is, check those instruction pages, the first 2 pages. But what you're doing here is authorizing a third party to discuss your license with the National Maritime Center. So if you have someone helping you submit your license, they're going to have you put their name and organization and sign here saying you authorize them to communicate with NMC. If you're just doing your license yourself, which is what I recommend, it's not very difficult, then just leave this completely blank. You will, however, have to put your name printed on the bottom of this page. So top of the page, bottom of the page. And that is all that's involved in the application for your 6-pack license. So let's go to this next form. The next one is the medical form. This is 10 pages. So this form is a little bit, well, twice as long as the application. You have to have this filled out, completed, your physical, by a physician's assistant, medical doctor, or nurse practitioner that are licensed. Doesn't have to be a special doctor that does maritime exams or anything. As far as I understand, I'm not a doctor, but this is a fairly routine or basic physical. So first page, down here it says page 1 of 10. So every page has a place for the medical practitioner's initials and the date. Please make sure they fill that out before you leave their office. Every page either has your name on it or a place to print your last, first, and middle initial and your date of birth. Don't submit this form to the Coast Guard without having the medical practitioner's initials and date on every page and your full name, date of birth on every page. Again, the first page starts with some instructions just like the 719B did. Second page, again, more instructions, and here at the bottom, medical practitioner's initials and date, your name and date of birth. Third page. The third page has got your name, address, all your personally identifying information. If you have your mariner's reference number, you put it here. If not, you put your Social Security number for your initial issue the first time. You're going to check this box right here, DEC. So endorsement held or sought. If you're getting your 6-pack license, you're seeking a DEC endorsement. Medical practitioner's initials and date. And then, is the applicant free from communicable disease? Yes or no? This is actually only necessary if you're a food handler and that's your position that you're asking to get a physical for. I would just have the doctor check no if you don't have any communicable diseases. All right, page 4. So we start off, the print your name is at the top of the page now. And the way this works is you're going to answer all of these questions. Read each question carefully. So for instance, the first one, blurry vision, poor night vision, eye disease, injury, eye surgery, abnormal color vision, cataracts, or glaucoma. You're going to answer yes, I have or have had one of those. No, never have, don't have. Previously reported, it's not really going to be necessary for any of us getting our initial issue because you haven't filled this form out before. If you have filled it out before and it's something that is on your last form, you can select previously reported. And then MW, if you look right up here, is a medical waiver. So you're going to answer yes or no to this question up here and then check medical waiver for whatever condition. In that instance, you would have had a previous medical certificate. So this probably isn't going to affect any of us. Most of us are just going to fill out yes or no. Read each one carefully. Select the right box. Medical practitioner's initials and date. Remember, your name's at the top on this one, theirs are at the bottom. So on this page, your name, date of birth at the top. If you said yes to any of those conditions that we just talked about on the previous page, you're going to put that item number. So let's go back to that real quick. If I said I had high blood pressure, so it's item number 3. So when I get to this page, I'm going to put item number 3 here, date of onset or diagnosis here, and then condition, high blood pressure. Treatment, you're taking medication to treat your high blood pressure. Status and limitations. So the medical practitioner is going to be the one writing this information. I'm sorry if I didn't say at the beginning. The medical practitioner is going to write this. They're going to discuss your current status, under control, whatever it is, and then any limitations you have. Cannot run a marathon, whatever limitations you have based on high blood pressure, which is what we selected here for item 3. And then they're going to do that with every item that you selected yes on that previous page. Don't forget to have the medical practitioner, when he's done filling this out, put his initials down here and the date. We're going to move on to page 6. Guess what? We've got to write our name on there, date of birth. This is where we're going to put any medication that we take. Medication, dose, frequency, condition. And then once we've written all that in, the medical practitioner is going to make their comments here. They're going to check your height, weight, resting pulse, blood pressure, and BMI. And then the doctor or whoever does your physical is going to fill out these blocks here. It's pretty self-explanatory, normal, abnormal, except for this block right here, hernia. I've seen this one missed quite a few times. You have a hernia? Yes. You don't have a hernia? No. So the doctor needs to select one of those. Then if they want to make any additional comments, let's say the doctor wants to make a full page of comments. This doesn't leave them with a lot of space. So they can attach a page from their office, or you can just print 2-page 6 of 10s, and they can use both pages to fill it out. Don't forget to have them sign our initial and date at the bottom. All right, page 7 of 10. Your name at the top there. Vision. Distance vision uncorrected. So if you wear glasses or contacts, you have to take them off and get your vision uncorrected, then corrected. Field of vision. The doctor needs to check your field of vision. Normally they just put their hand out or something, a pencil or something on the sides of your head and see how far your field of vision is on each side. Color vision. They have to perform one of these tests listed here. Once they figure out which test they're going to perform, they're going to check that test off. Color vision testing results, passed or failed, and then number of errors. So this is a 14 plate test. They're going to put, 1 error. So you'd have 1 plate that you missed out of 14. And if you've never done the color vision test, it's like a circle. It's got a bunch of colored dots. And if you have good color vision, you can see that there's a number inside of those dots. And if you don't have good color vision, you can't see that number. That would be an error. Hearing, normal, abnormal, hearing aid required. Doctor's going to check that off, and that's all that's necessary if you have normal hearing. If you have abnormal hearing or hearing aids required, they're going to have to do the Booth test or a hearing test, and those results will go in here. If you have normal hearing, you only have to have that checked right there, though. You don't have to do a hearing test. Medical practitioner has to initial and date. Next page, 8, your name, date of birth. So this is a list of tasks considered necessary for performing ordinary and emergency response on shipboard functions. So the doctor needs to, basically when they sign at the bottom, they're certifying that you can perform these tasks. You have the physical ability to perform these tasks. All right, don't let them forget to initial and date at the bottom of the form. Your name's going to be at the top of page 9 of 10. They're going to sign, check here, applicant, which is you, proof of identity. So you're going to have to show your driver's license something, yes or no. Then, do they recommend, not recommend, or need to further review your medical record? Hopefully you get a recommend here. Assessment, preliminary screening indicates the applicant is not at high risk of having a condition that poses a significant risk of sudden incapacitation or debilitating complication, to include uncontrolled obstructive sleep apnea, diabetes, or coronary artery disease. So, yes, preliminary screening indicates the applicant is not at high risk. You want to put yes there. Any discussion the doctor wants to have, notes they're going to write in here. Medical practitioner's name, signature, address, license number, state, phone number, and if they have a stamp, they'd place it here. Below their signature, your signature, month, day, year that you signed right there. All right, let's go page 10, last page. Your name, date of birth. And then the rest of the signature blocks here, the first one is consent for the medical practitioner to release information to the Coast Guard. The second is consent for Coast Guard to release information to a third party. The third is consent for a third party to act on your behalf. These are all voluntary choices. So read through the instructions here and it describes what those are for. You don't have to sign any of these. You can send it in just with your signature on the previous page. Right here, you have to sign here, but you don't have to consent for medical practitioner to release information, consent to a third party, either to act on your behalf or to receive information from the Coast Guard. That's the medical form. Next is C service form. All right, C service, the top of the first page, name, mariner's reference number or social security number, vessel name, official number, gross tons, length, width, depth, propulsion, diesel, gas, outboards, gas, auxiliary sail. You served as, if you're applying for a license, you need to have served in some kind of above deck position for all of your time to count. So if you're the operator, deckhand, lookout, master mate, those kind of jobs, you're going to have been on deck. If you're an engineer, you're going to be below deck, and it will affect your sea time for getting a near coastal license. So make sure when you fill this out, if you served as an engineer or below decks, I would fill out two of these forms, one for my above deck service and one for my below deck service, so I didn't get all this time counted for below deck. So I've got a sample form here filled out. We just went over this, your name, name of the boat, official number, inboard diesel, operator, name or body of water, Atlantic Ocean and Chesapeake Bay. So the way this form is filled out, this form is good for one boat. So if you have multiple boats, you're going to have to use multiple copies of the same form. And it's good for 5 years on that one boat. So if you have 10 years or 6 years, you're going to have to use 2 copies of this form for that one boat. So let's look at how we do this. This first column is January, and it's split by year and days. So January of 2019, this guy, Timothy Smith, had 0 days underway. Actually, if you look, 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, he had 0 days underway in January and February. Apparently, Timothy does not like the cold. March, he starts getting some days. He's got 2 days. 2019, he's got 2 days in 2020 in March, 2 days in 2021. April, you can see for each year, he starts getting a few more days. May, each year, some more days. June, a couple of months he gets more days. A couple of years, sorry, a couple of months or a couple of years he doesn't. So the year days for each of the months, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. You go through this form and fill out all those days for your underway or sea service. At the bottom, total number of days served on this vessel. So if you count all these days up here, it's 279. Average hours underway per day. In this case, it was 4. 4 is the minimum hours underway per day for each of these days to count as a full day for licenses under 100 ton. If you're going above 100 tons at any point, you have to have 8-hour days. But for 100 tons or less, 4 hours underway counts as a day. So we have 4 hours, so all 279 right here are going to count. So if this said 2 hours, only half of these 279 days are going to count as my sea service time. Average distance offshore, whether it's inland or offshore, you put your average distance. Here I just put a mile. Number of days in the Great Lakes, 0. Number of days on waters shoreward of the boundary line. So that means inside the boundary line, which means inland, 201. Number of days served seaward of the boundary line, which means offshore, is 178. So if I add up 201 and 178, this guy did his math wrong. He's going to end up with 379 days. So this should read 201 and 78, which gives him 279 days. So how many days do you need to get a license? We need 360. So this one form is not going to be enough to give Mr. Timothy Smith the proper days that he needs to get his credential. So make sure 201.78 that your shoreward of the boundary line and your seaward of the boundary line days add up to whatever you put as your total days. And your total days adds up to all your months here added together. All right, now we're going to go to the signature page. So if you read up here, owners of vessels may attest to their own experience and provide proof of ownership. So if it's your vessel, you're going to sign as the applicant and the owner, and you have to attach a copy of the title to the boat, registration, some kind of proof of ownership. If you own the boat 10 years ago, you're going to have to contact the state you registered it in to get a copy of that registration or proof that you own the boat. So you're going to sign date. Then if you're the owner of the boat, you're going to sign date and put copy of proof of ownership along with the application. If this is someone else's boat, they're going to sign and date, put their full name here, email address, city, state, all that information. Have them read here, because when they sign, they're certifying that the above individual, which is you, has served on the above vessel, which is the vessel that we indicated on the first page of this form, this vessel right here. You don't have to put proof. Their signature owning the boat is proof enough right now for the Coast Guard that you got that sea time in their boat. Basically, if you think about it, now 2 people have attested to the sea time. If you signed for yourself, that's only one person, and then you provide proof of ownership. That's kind of another check that you owned the boat during the times that you're saying you got the sea service. That's all that's required right now. All right, let's go to this 719C. So if you remember on the 719B, which is that initial application form, I said if you answered yes to any of those conviction questions, DUIs, criminal convictions, that you're going to have to complete this form. So this is only a 2-page form. The first page has instructions. The second page is where you're going to put your information to give them more detailed information on any convictions that you've had. A conviction, DUI, doesn't usually mean you're not going to get a credential from the Coast Guard, but they need the amplifying information. If you've had a number of DUIs, and they were recently, it may impede your ability to get a license, but they want the information. So one other warning, remember when we signed our name to that application, it said anything they find false in the application, even if it wouldn't prevent you from getting a license, may prevent you from getting it for a year because you didn't tell the truth. So if you had a DUI in 2014 and you say you didn't have any DUIs, and then they check your National Driver's Registry and find that you had a DUI, that DUI probably wouldn't have been any cause to deny your license or your credential. But since you didn't tell them about it, now they have the option of holding your license for a year and not letting you have it. If you don't get it within a year, you got to take this class again, because this class is only good for a year. So make sure you put down any trouble that you've been in. And then if you put yes, make sure you fill out this 719C form. And it's basically conviction details: convicted of, in the city, state, county, date that you were convicted, court findings, you were guilty, you were adjudicated to being guilty, you pled no contest, whatever it was, you put it right in here. And then the court sentence requirements, it explains right here what they want to see. And then what happened. So if you were sentenced to like probation and community service, that you can successfully complete both, those kind of things. And there's spots for 2 different convictions. If you have more than 2, you're going to have to print up multiple copies of page 2 here and just keep filling this thing out until you've put all your convictions in there. Sign, date. OUPV checklist. All right. This is a checklist. It's basically what the evaluator is going to use when you send in your application package to the Coast Guard. So, did you fill out your 719B application? Do you have your TWIC card? Your medical certificate? So that 10-page medical form we just covered, when you send that in, you're going to get a medical card that for your 6-pack or APV credential is going to be good for 5 years. So let's say you sent in your physical, which you can do right now if you want, and it is dated 10 months before you get your license. You're already gonna have that card. So this is where they would check and make sure you have a medical certificate card on file. If you send it in with your application, they're gonna see it's kind of happening at the same time. Drug testing compliance. You have to have a clean DOT-5 drug test within 6 months. So if I'm submitting my application on September the 1st, 2023, within 6 months of September 1st, I have to have a clean drug testing compliance sheet. I need to have proof showing I was tested for the DOT-5. Mariner's fees, they have to be paid. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Sea service letters, which we use that 719S to document sea time, or you can have someone that write a letter, like a licensed captain that you worked for can write a letter. And when you go to the online class, there's a link to a Coast Guard document that describes how to write those letters and what sea time counts and what counts as sea time and everything. Recency. So now we're going to get the days at sea requirements. The first one is 90 of your days that you're counting on sea service has to have happened within the last 3 years. So this is to make sure you're recent on your underway time. So we need a total, if you look here, of 360 days, 90 of which happened in the last 3 years. If we want near coastal, 360 days in operation of vessels, of which 90 happened on the ocean, near coastal, or Great Lakes waters. So ocean's pretty obvious. Near coastal, as soon as you break the boundary line, which in your OUPV class you're going to learn about boundary lines. They're often the same as the coal rigs line, which we'll talk about a lot. But once you clear the inlet, basically, that's near coastal. Get a little bit farther out, it's ocean, and then you have the Great Lakes water. So near coastal, 6-pack license, 360 days, of sea time, 90 of which were in the ocean or near coastal or on the Great Lakes, 90 of which happened in the last 3 years. That qualifies you for near coastal. If you don't have 90 days near coastal, ocean, or Great Lakes, then you're going to get an inland license. If you look right here, my cursor's at 360 days of operation of vessels. So that would be inland. On your sea service form, you'd have selected shoreward of the boundary line. So that's the days at sea. All right, let's go over a few other requirements here. You have to be 18 years old. First aid, CPR. We'll talk about that. I'll show you a certificate in a minute for that. That has to be first aid within a year. CPR must be valid. So I think they give those certificates for maybe 2 or a couple years. So you can have CPR a few years ago as long as your card's still valid. But you got to have first aid within the last year. It's important for you taking this course. Exams. Course completion certificate in lieu of Coast Guard exams. That's what you're going to have from this class. You're going to have a certificate showing successful completion of an OUPV course that has been approved by the Coast Guard, which is what this course is. So that's going to give you that part of the checklist. All right, let's go to the CPR first aid. So here's a sample of a certificate. This one happens to be from Emergency University. There's many other Coast Guard approved CPR and first aid courses. I like this one because they have a partially online class. It seems to be the easiest way for most people to complete this requirement. And when I say easy, the course isn't easy, but instead of finding some in-person training somewhere locally and then scheduling it and making it to the classes, they do a lot of this training online, and then they do some where they either Zoom call you or FaceTime you or something and have you run through the practical part of the course. If you look at the certificate, your name would go here, and then this is part of the certificate, USCG accepted adult CPR. This number right here is a Coast Guard approval number for this course, the CPR course. This is their Coast Guard approval number for the first aid. If your certificate isn't Red Cross and it doesn't have a Coast Guard approval number on it, they're not going to accept it. So before you take a first aid course, contact me or your instructor and we'll tell you where you can go to get Coast Guard approved first aid and CPR courses. TWIC. Here's a sample of a TWIC card, Transportation Workers Identification Card. So the best way to get this is go to this website. My link didn't work there. That's pretty funny. So if you just go to Google, put in TWIC, Transportation Security Administration, TWIC card right here, you'll get to this website. You can you're applying online, schedule an appointment. If you scroll down a little bit, it gives you the steps to receiving a TWIC card. Complete the online application, that button right there. Schedule an appointment, that button right there. And when you go to schedule an appointment, you can select the closest place to you. So you can go here before you try to schedule an appointment, put your zip code in, and then search for a place near you. So for me, Wilmington, North Carolina, Morehead City, North Carolina, it lists a couple options here. It gives me how far they are away. So when I go in to schedule an appointment, I would schedule it for whichever one of those I wanted to go to. You can also call this number. When you visit that application center for your appointment, you have to provide your required documentation. So if you click on that link, it's going to ask you some questions and then tell you your what you're required to have for documentation. Let's see if we can go through that here. Let's choose Norfolk, Virginia. And then I'm a U.S. citizen. So it's going to tell me what forms. I must have a photo ID, so driver's license issued by state. Anyways, you go through this entire website, this section, and it'll give you an idea of exactly what documentation you need to bring for your appointment. Then you're going to sit down, they're going to fingerprint you, take a photo. and then it's $125.25 is the applicant fee for a new application. That's the TWIC card. Next thing I have to do is pay Coast Guard fees before you can get your application or get your credential issued by the Coast Guard. Let's see if this link works. There we go. Now we got the correct link. So when you successfully complete the course, I send you an email with an electronic copy of your certificate. There's also a link to this pay.gov site. Or you can go to the National Maritime Center website, as we discussed earlier, go to their fees section and it'll have a link to this website. So we're going to pay U.S. Coast Guard Merchant Mariner fee, and then we're going to continue to the form here. I'm going to go over one quick part of this. So you're going to fill out all your information here, Social Security number or Mariner's reference number, and then you're going to have this user fee information. So this will be available to you also in that email once you can successfully complete the class, but I'll go through it real quick with you. So you're going to select Officer Endorsements. Type of endorsement, Original Officer Endorsement. Additional endorsements, none of those. Examination testing fees. Course in lieu of exam. Issuance fees, $45. So if you look over here, it should be $145. So we go back to additional endorsements. Rating original endorsement, $100. So officer rating endorsements, original officer endorsement, rating original endorsement, course in lieu of exam. So you don't want to select in these others because they're going to have you scheduled for an exam. And by taking this course, you're taking this course in lieu or in place of taking the exam. Then pay your issuance fee, $45. So $145. Press continue, and it's going to ask for that information I didn't put in before and take you to payment info. And you can pay with a debit or credit card or a bank account. This concludes this video on the application submittal for an OUPV or 6-pack license. If you have any questions about the license, please contact me at ross@captainschool.com.